Welcome into another edition of the Just Basketball Show. I'm Brendon Kleen. That over there is Chris Manning. We are back. It is Wednesday, August 9th. If you're finding us for the first time, we are all over the podcast world. Wherever app you use, YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Get us in your feed twice a week talking hoops. Give us 5 stars on YouTube. Subscribe there, of course. Give us a comment, all that good stuff. If you have not before, want to let everybody know today's show is sponsored in part by Homage, an ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company, making shirts of the losing team of the game that we're going to break down here momentarily, the Las Vegas Aces, in addition to tons of other awesome licenses across the NBA, WNBA vintage stuff, hundreds of other unique lifestyle and pop culture designs. Click the link in our show description below. Buy something, a gift, something for yourself. You're just a diehard hoops fan like us, you want something good, they have it for you. A little bit of that money goes back to us. We're going to have a little bit of a grab bag show today. Recommend checking out our show from Monday if you're finding us here on Wednesday. We talked deep on Destination NBA, the new Prime Video documentary about the G League. Interviewed the directors of that movie. A lot of good stuff there. So we have a lot of news to catch up on. Chris has been out of town, and that's where we're going to start. Chris, you were in really the basketball the center of the basketball ecosystem on Sunday at 3 Eastern. We had Aces versus Liberty Part 2. Really felt like Part 1. I decided to flush the first one down the toilet, and it is the first of 3 matchups that these teams will have this month. It was a lopsided game, but we can break down the basketball side, but take us inside that arena. Felt like it was rocking. Yeah. The crowd cared. There was lines out the door. What was it all like?
Let's start with the lines, because if people haven't been to Barclays before for a Nets game, a concert, whatever, if you haven't been to New York in that area, I want to clarify. I just go to New York. I've been a bunch. I have family from their friends there. So I'm not going to tell you I know exactly how often this is really like that. So this is coming from someone who can at least whatever. You get off the train, you go up the stairs, and Barclays stares you in the face. It's a cool little area. There's actually a very nice Gigi and Kobe Bryant mural right off to the side that you can see next to a shoe store. It's a nice little area. The line an hour before the game, the ostensible tip-off time of 3 p.m., it was jammed. Outside, it is busy. It is jammed. Tons of Sabrina Ionescu jerseys, tons of Sabrina Ionescu T-shirts, including myself. I was wearing a Sabrina Ionescu T-shirt. Tons of Seafoam. And then little sprinklings of Aces gear. Little sprinkling of people in Asia Wilson jerseys, or I saw a Chelsea Gray jersey. I saw, I think, what was a bootleg Plum Dog T-shirt. Also some Brianna Stewart UConn gear as well.
Yeah.
A lot of UConn Husky jerseys, including and also the home field apparel tee that
we don't know what that is here.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Different, right? Never heard of them. But a lot of UConn stuff, a ton of UConn stuff, and all Stewie and a couple DT things. Get in the arena, and it's jammed. Tons of people. This was a record crowd for the Liberty Barclays, about nearly 12,000 people. There's only one section of the arena closed off. You go to the team shop. I do want to say I want to ding Barclays. I want to ding the Liberty for one thing in particular.
A shot
here.
at Joe Tsai.
The team shop is horrible. It is badly organized. It is badly run, and the lack of cohesion in the design and lack of overwhelming amounts of New York Liberty gear is frankly appalling. They had one hat, you tell me you can't get I couldn't buy a Seafoam dad hat. That's wrong. That's just wrong. It wasn't good.
You're
they
right.
could do a lot better.
There's not enough men's sports gear out there, Chris.
Okay, but even for women, no, Brendan, there's one hat.
I hear you.
One hat. And then a bunch of Nets hats. Okay? Mm-hmm. I understand you're maybe going to still sell Nets stuff, but give me some diversification of the gear.
Yeah.
There's some people from France who I talked to who are there to buy Mourinho. How do you say her last name, Brendan? I'm going to butcher it.
They'd always just say Johannes, but I doubt that's the French pronunciation.
So Marine Johannes There's people that are from France. I sent Brendan a picture of this. There was a woman that I talked to that had a Johannes French national team jersey. They were getting custom printed Liberty Johannes jerseys, which is very cool. And here's the kick. Here's what I would say is the kicker. We were with friend of the program, Chris Longo, works at Den of Geek. Multiple times throughout this game and then at dinner afterwards, he said that Liberty game, that environment, was better than Brooklyn Nets playoff games. That was the energy in this arena. This felt like a big matchup. You had stars in the crowd as well. Record crowd, a lot of energy. We can talk about game presentation stuff and but Brendan, this was That's true. Weirdly, they didn't show him till the fourth quarter, which that doesn't matter. Well, that's an off pod conversation for you and I about like maybe you're just building to Sudeikis with Liberty t-shirts and his daughter's there, whatever. Just a very cool environment. It felt like a big game. It felt like a big moment. And the crowd, even though it was ultimately a blowout win, Brendan, this was a environment that was so bought in. This felt like a really big deal, and it was a really big deal.
Blowout, but super competitive, and one of those games
feisty.
Where, yeah, exactly. Like there's everybody who is a sports fan, period, but even especially a basketball fan with how much lopsidedness we can sometimes see in scores. Like this had a playoff intensity. This was an incredibly well played game. It just so happens that one team went on a big run and it happened toward the end of the game. So, the other team kind of put up the white flag, but this got me much more excited for the competition, the battles between these teams to come than it did like, oh wow, this was boring in some sort of way. The score did not tell the story.
Yeah, well, do you know that? Do you know how I think we kind of confirmed that this was a big deal? I don't know if you saw some of these tweets from Asia Wilson.
Oh yeah, the MVP talk getting thrown in there, and people in her head about her shooting, and she's not going to mess up again. And obviously, she got hurt and almost concussed in this game. Yeah.
Yeah, which by the way, that wasn't a flagrant to me. That junk that was not a really. I understand it's like a little aggressive, but that was like that was a basketball move to me. That wasn't
interesting.
Like a super...
Rebecca Lobo was kind of saying on the broadcast, like it's up to you being Jonquel Jones in that instance, and Rebecca Lobo also being a post player knows this. Sure. Like you got to watch your shoulders, you got to watch your elbows,
sure.
You got to watch your forearms, your everything, because you're a large person with a lot of force behind you. But yeah, Asia did not have her best game, and we'll get into that. Was this your first WNBA game?
I being from Cleveland, I may have went to a Rockers game when I was a kid, but if I do, I don't remember it. But yes, this is what I will count as my first WNBA game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Liberty being one of the original franchises, it is cool that they are now being treated, at least in terms of having an actual home arena, with the level of respect that allows their fans to actually go see the team. They were playing in Westchester for a few years because James Dolan is an asshole.
Well, and they also played like games at Radio City Music Hall, which like if you've been to Radio City Music Hall either for a show or to go on the tour, that doesn't make any sense as a place for people to play basketball games. It's literally an absurd thing to consider that for not a ton, but the New York Liberty play basketball games are in it. It doesn't make any sense at all if you really think about it.
All right, let's get to the game. So I thought that off the top, the big picture takeaway to me was the Liberty did a really, really good job at executing their defensive game plan in this game, trying to take away the paint, trying to make all of the players on Vegas beat them one-on-one, but, especially with the way that Asia ended up going cold, that was particularly noteworthy. Is she usually can save them, but for whatever reason, they were out of rhythm. The other players weren't quite, engaged and involved the way that they normally are. They didn't share the ball like they often do. They got uncomfortable, and then Asia wasn't able to bail them out like she sometimes does. You couple that with Ionescu just going crazy, and that's why the blowout was there. But I mean, the first half of this game was everything you could have asked for, I think, in terms of wanting to see high level of basketball between what are clearly the two best teams in the W.
Brendan, live, this game felt like the Liberty showed up and answered the bell. This is what this game felt like to me in terms of a physicality perspective. The first game, I thought a large part of that game was that the Aces were the more physical team. That first matchup was really the Aces being the adult basketball team and really dominating in a physical sense. I thought in this game, whether it was Sabrina Ionescu on defense, I think in particular, her offense is going to get the credit there and a lot of the attention, but her defense, I think, really held up well. Breanna Stewart, defending Asia Wilson for chunks of this game and being an interior defensive presence. Jonquel Jones, like everyone on this team, I thought really just held up defensively and bought into what they needed to do. And that was not the case in game one. And if they play that physical and have the offensive upside they do, like that's the recipe. Like this game, they could play a very similar game and not beat the Aces by as much as they did. But this is the template of a performance for them that could allow them to win the title. Like that doesn't feel out of the question to me that they could put together a couple of these games in a series like this and ultimately go home champions. This is how they would do it.
Yeah, a lot of it came together, I think, and the fact that they were able to do this with Stewie only shooting 8 of 20, and especially in the first half, just like wasn't really a major force. I think she made a couple of big threes in the first half, but other than that, she did have a couple of nice blocks too, and obviously finishes with 3 steals and 3 blocks total. But this wasn't a game, if you were to just say the biggest cheat code that New York has in this matchup is that Stewie can score over anybody that Vegas throws at her. That really wasn't it. So it almost makes you more, I think, impressed and excited about what they can do going forward. But it was, to circle back, a lot of what they've been doing during their improved sort of late July into early August stretch, the Liberty showed up. And if your takeaway from that first game was the physicality, I hear that completely. The Liberty scored 98 points in that game and shot 58% from the field. To me, my big takeaway was just that I came away from the first matchup like, can the Liberty guard the Aces at all? Like, is it just a wrap? And I do think that you noticed the fact that Candace Parker was not on the court was very noticeable in this game. The fact that Jonquel Jones was able to be in the paint instead of having to space guard a spaced out Candace Parker, and what she can do as a playmaker. She had 5 assists in the first game, and Kia Stokes is just not the type of player who's going to do that. So the fact that they didn't have to have Stewie go off and the fact that their defense looked capable, like those are huge indicators going forward, because I think those were both probably the 2 biggest questions. And I don't think one game answers them, but they got a lot closer to answering those questions.
And look, we don't know if Candace Parker is going to be around we don't really know if she's going to play or not if these 2 teams do meet in the finals. So that's worth learning. But I feel like we've wasted a little bit. We've not gotten to Sabrina Ionescu as quickly as we maybe should have in talking about this game, because I think she, in a lot of ways, will be the story of this game. You could look at Asia Wilson, having the performance she did. You could look at, Kelsey Plum had a very quiet day by her standards. You could look at how the physicality thing we touched on. But Ionescu, I texted you this. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say we have seen every game she has played at the WNBA and the WNBA or college or wherever. I would love to I didn't see if she got asked this, but I'd kind of like to know if she thought maybe this was the best game she's played as a pro in hindsight. To me, this is considering the stage, considering the moment, considering how she was really the hunted one in the last time these 2 teams played. This is the best game I think I've seen her play as a professional. She had 31 in 31 minutes and 55 seconds, just under 32. If this is a closer game, she probably breaks her career high, which I believe is 37. 12 of 19 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3. Also had 7 assists against just 1 turnover, had 5 boards, and again, really held up defensively. This was a complete 2-way performance from Sabrina.
Yeah.
Like, this is a legitimate all-star performance from her. And she was just absolutely unconscious this entire game. And if I'm the Aces, that would terrify me, just because in the same way we know that Asia Wilson's not going to probably play the way she did again in the Commissioner's Cup in a little bit. I don't, if you look at this and say, okay, maybe Sabrina's not going to go 6 of 10 from 3 again, but if she goes 4 of 10, 4 of 11, and Stewie is kind of has a normal Stewie game,
yeah,
good luck dealing with those 2.
No, you're totally right to point out that it was a 2-way game. I think it just sort of goes back to how strange the offensive approach was from Vegas. They were doing strange things, getting the wrong types of switches. It just felt like the initial punch that New York threw got them out of sorts in a way. And again, maybe Asia being cold, but that's the way that they can exploit Ionescu is one-on-one. But I think she's been doing for a bit everything she possibly can. And in this game at a higher level of competition, did it again defensively to just be in the right places, rotate correctly, execute the game plan. She was helping. There was a play where she helped off Kirsten Bell in the corner, who is a developing offensive player for New York or for Vegas that doesn't typically play, and she took away and got a steal on a pass to the roller where she was just right in the paint where she needed to be. A very, very good defensive game. So I did want to shout that out. But the offensive ability, the deep shooting ability, the ability to space the floor, she never stops moving when she doesn't have the ball. She's cutting, she's running off screen, she's everywhere she needs to be. It just created, honestly, like terror for the Aces, it felt like. And there was one play in the third quarter, the run that they went on when Ionescu had been hot for the whole second quarter and then finally, wasn't cooling off by any means, but the ball was starting to find other people. She caught the ball in transition in kind of the right wing, but like extended, like 10 feet behind the arc. She wasn't even going to shoot. But the fact that she was so hot, the fact that she has that deep range, terrified the Aces so much that they sent two bodies toward her 10 feet behind the three-point line in full transition. She's at a full sprint. It's not like she's slowing down even with the ability to pull up. And she just hits Benijah Laney for a completely wide open right corner three. The next possession, she gets a paint touch, kicks it to, I believe, Laney again in the right corner, another three. And so that unselfishness and ability to use her gravity to her benefit, it was an all-around dominant game, and she was the best player on the court. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this was a game of, how many All-Stars? And she was clearly the best player that there was. On the Aces side, I want to explore whether you think there was anything happening with Asia's performance, or is it just sometimes even awesome players just miss shots?
It's awesome players miss good shots. It was a differently physical game. And again, to go back to her posting on, well, I guess we have to call it X now, right?
Like, sure.
Okay.
I guess.
When she goes to that platform that will not be named, and it clearly was just like, F this. Like, clearly, like, was bothered by this. I just don't think she's going to play like that the rest of the season. And, like, when she's like, I want to read the exact quote because I don't want to get this wrong. But the quote about, she posted a Britney Spears gif and said, now I'm done. And, like, clearly having fun with it, too. But said, I don't need a stat sheet to validate who I am in the league. I kind of think she's going to drop, like, 40 in a game in the next, like, week.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also feel like there were some moments where if you're going to buy into any worry about her, let me start it that way. I would say that the burden that's placed on her, especially when they go small as a defender, is extreme. However, she's used to that. She's experienced that before. In 2020, she was pretty much a center and won MVP. And at times last year, they didn't have Candace Parker, so she played that role a lot, even though they had De'Arica Hamby and their small lineups were at least a little bigger overall, rather than like Alicia Clark playing the four, which is kind of what's happening right now. She still handled that duty. So it's not something we haven't seen her take on as far as a two-way level of extreme responsibility, but it might be some adjustment. There are going to be games where the front-rimmed jumper from the right block toward the end of the third quarter, I was like, she's exhausted. Like, there were some of those moments where you're just like, the legs aren't there. She's huffing and puffing. It's ugly. But you're right. Early in the game, she missed a couple bunnies, missed a couple driving jumpers, things that it's just her signature stuff that just did not go in. So I tend to not be worried about it either. I think that if they're just a little more, if their approach going into the next game is just a little bit more let it fly from deep, I think things look a lot different too. I think that, again, the mentality and the approach just got jammed up. And, it's not going to be a wide open three, but if you know that they're packing the paint heading into opening tip and you're, Jackie Young and you're like, forget, two dribbles into a pull up or a layup. I'm taking 10 threes tonight. and she's going to make them, right? They're going to make those shots. They're a great shooting team. So I do think some of it is like if this was a playoff series, you're like, if you're the Liberty, we stole one.
Mm-hmm.
Wipe our forehead of sweat and move on to the next game and don't take anything for granted. And it's not a playoff series, but it might as well be over the next few weeks. And I feel like they'll just throw their counterpunch in the next one. But again, I'm beyond excited for the next two because this was an awesome game.
If you love basketball, you need to watch the other matchup between these two teams and then watch the WNBA finals if they get there. Like you have to. If you don't, but I just think weird things can happen. I do wonder if even if they've been really successful without her, this felt like maybe the first time that they're processing in a negative way, not having Candace Parker. I think that John Cole Jones would have her playing inside was a really good shout on your part. But I think they, I looked at the betting markets and they went from like a plus 300 favorite to like the Liberty went from like plus 300 to like plus 275 as far as title odds. So they didn't shift like a significant amount, but like they shifted a little bit. But the Aces are still the favorites. But it feels more plausible, perhaps, than it did a week ago that maybe the Liberty pulled this off.
Yep. All right. We'll circle back to the WNBA momentarily, but let's go on to the Los Angeles Lakers and Anthony Davis, who signed a 3-year, $186 million extension the day he was eligible for it. There is a player option on the final year, and predictably, but just to tie it up, fully guaranteed contract. So I just don't have the energy or concern here to get too worked up about this one, Chris. This is a franchise that publicly and loudly prides itself on compensating the stars who get them the glory that they've rightly gotten in the NBA. They make a whole scene about it. And whether you believe in him or not, whether you're concerned about the injuries, which you should be, or not, this is what happens to top 10 type players, even when they're approaching their mid-30s.
Let me play devil's advocate for this. And people that maybe don't know this or listening for the first time, our producer, Dylan Heiser, is a Lakers fan. So hopefully this makes Dylan's skin crawl a little bit.
If nothing else, it's a test to see how closely he listens while he's editing.
Yeah, Dylan, by the way, Dylan also a Real Madrid fan, so just a real front runner, honestly.
Absolutely.
Real tough. Is this not immediately, though, just one of the riskier NBA deals we have? Considering his injury history, his propensity to be down on the ground and not look right.
Yeah.
And considering that, like, this is also theoretically maybe maximizing what LeBron's next couple years are going to look like. This is not immediately one of the most high-stakes extensions we have over the next couple years. I think, obviously, this is what happens, but is there not just, like, a ton of stakes in this for this working out? And it's not, like, implausible if this doesn't exactly work out for AD and the Lakers. Like, that wouldn't be, like, an unrealistic outcome to me if we're kind of looking at this and saying, this isn't, like, a slam dunk extension.
Sure.
This is, like, there is some risk here, which is baked into everything, but I do think there's some risk.
There is risk. There absolutely is risk. This is 3 years atop the 2 he already has. So it goes through 2028, at which point he will be 35 years old.
You're telling, there's no way Anthony Davis at this rate is going to be moving super well at 35. I just don't know what he's going to look like at 35.
Yeah, so let me pin you down on what the particular issue that you're worried about is, because where my mind goes immediately when I hear you ask that question is to timing. As much as that last year, maybe the last 2 years, you're really playing with fire in terms of, is the guy going to be anywhere near the level of value that the salary would indicate? And I can't say yes to that. But there's a world in which that last year, the last 2 years, are on a rebuilding Lakers team that LeBron James doesn't exist in. I mean, in 2028, LeBron James, I would hope, is in a retirement mansion somewhere in like the outskirts of Cleveland or LA and just not paying attention to any of this, or he's at Vegas NBA games as an owner. And so that risk is lessened. It's the same thing that why it was okay that they signed Kobe to the giant contract once upon a time. Because it's like, well, is Jordan Clarkson getting paid anytime soon in his rookie season or whatever that whole team was? No, it was like, what else are we going to do with the money? I kind of think that's what they're doing here is that's going to be a transition era no matter what happens. So we might as well keep AD happy, reward him for what he's given us, and figure it out later.
I think that's right. I guess I think what is the turn? What is the? I don't really know what the turn. I look. This is maybe not totally fair.
Austin Reeves will be on his second MVP trophy by then. So maybe that's the guy we got to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean it's really the Reeves and AD show more than anything else. But look, let's talk about it this way. Or at least I want to ask it this way. We are in whatever year of AD, right? However many years. It's 2011 draft, right? 2012 draft?
I think this is his, more than 10 seasons. Okay. So let's agree.
So I think it's Kyrie's 2011. I think AD's 2012. I'm pretty sure.
11 seasons he's achieved. He's going into his 12th.
For a guy that is going to be the face of the Lakers post-LeBron, at the center point of that transition in some way, do we really have a good grasp of what that looks like? I don't know if I know. Like, some of that will be what other money comes available. The cap's going to rise. Maybe they go get another star, and it just doesn't matter. But I have questions, I guess, about what that transition looks like and how successful that can really be if we just based on what we understand AD is now. I think you're going to need to find there was so much talk, and maybe this was just talk and posturing and trying to make AD happy or whatever, but think about how much talk there was about LeBron's, this is going to become AD's team, LeBron to age gracefully. If you're going to ask me right now to power rank who the most important player in the Lakers is to win a title next year, it's not AD, it's LeBron. So, what does that look like when LeBron is retired, producing films? Maybe he owns the Vegas franchise, right? What does AD look like in that role? That's just It's just a massive unknown to me if we're processing this out.
Yeah, I don't think he's the best player on whatever that team is.
That would just scare. That just would scare me.
No, 100%. And I don't even think we're on opposite sides of this. I think you're just parsing out what happens when you actually logistically get to the end of this thing, even though we both agree this was likely the outcome of the extension talks kind of in any world, right? So I don't even think we disagree, and I hear you completely. I think, the Lakers operate as if they always will be able to find the co-pilot, find the backup plan, find the other thing, and so it might be that there's a couple down years while AD is on a bloated salary and has a hard time staying on the court, and I don't think his game, as it currently looks, will age very well. I hear you on that. I think the fact that his jump shooting is still not where you want it to be makes it really hard to bet on whatever the mid-30s version of a player like that is going to be. An athlete-first defense guy, somebody who, his physicality is so fundamental to his game, all that stuff, that has to be considered. But where I kind of wanted to...
Well, can I just say one thing on a dollar figure amount? Richest annual extension in NBA history. It's $62 million a year annually.
Yeah.
It's just again,
until
we know the Caps.
Kawhi Leonard gets one in a month or whatever.
If Kawhi Leonard, Brandon beats AD's extension, I really don't know what that.
Well, it might not be him, but it's the same thing with Jaylen Brown. It's it will be that until the next one.
Yeah. Look, these numbers just are making my brain hurt at this point. It's kind of my point. It's just these numbers are so big. It's just crazy. Just crazy.
Let me pivot back to the coach, the timeline situation, and take us to the coaching side of this, because I do think there is something here that's interesting, which is the fact that the Lakers see Anthony Davis as worthy of the type of loyalty and sort of respect by way of paying you that they did not see Ty Lue as. Because once upon a time, the Lakers refused to give Ty Lue a contract that wasn't directly tied to LeBron's, right, in terms of years.
Mm-hmm.
And even after they won the championship in 2020 and both AD and LeBron get extensions, they're both for the same amount of time, basically. And so that honestly might be the most interesting part of this to me is the fact that AD has sort of graduated into the stratosphere of how the Lakers view him, that he doesn't kind of have to be connected to LeBron, that they're not trying to give themselves an out from the Anthony Davis business as soon as LeBron has an exit path, which could come as soon as next summer. They're now saying, no, we're fine with Anthony Davis for 4 years beyond whatever we know about LeBron. That's a surprise.
I think you're right, and I think this is a reminder that the Lakers oftentimes are at the forefront of being a player-driven organization in a lot of ways, right? Like, other teams do this. I think particularly teams with the best players in the league do this, right? Like, you have a situation where, like, look, the Suns, I think they were willing to change coaches, right? Like, you have teams with really great players willing to change coaches now. Like, I mean, there's another universe where, like, you know, Bud sticks around in Milwaukee and, like, they don't retool up there, right, in a different way. Or, like, Mike Malone, you know, is kind of not like an anomaly in that sense, right? Like, where like they don't stick with someone. The Lakers just have always kind of felt on, like, the extreme version of, like, the player first kind of thing in a lot of ways, and with, like, the star guys that go. I mean, it's kind of, you know, we're not going to talk about winning time on this episode. We're going to talk about that come next week, but, like, it goes back to, like, the DNA of the Jerry Buss ownership thing, which is, like, it's about the stars. It's about the coach is, like, sort of like a secondary piece in your whole thing. Even if I don't, like, if I was running an organization, I would not view that to be true. I don't really think that's, like,
you would view a coach over a player?
No. I'm not even saying they're equal, but I'm saying I think, like, Ty Lue's value on, like, establishing a culture and making your team successful, it's like it has value that, like, you shouldn't just have to tie it to, like, a star player, I guess is my
to me
point.
it's kind of like both.
Point.
Like, both Ty Lue and
both.
Anthony Davis should be extended for longer than LeBron, and they should be okay with that.
Yeah, but like Frank Vogel, it's like, you win a title, like, bye, brother. Like, even though we did things that weren't, like, your fault, you know, it's like that's the part of it where there's the disconnect. But I think you're right to say, like, it's like the Lakers in the last 15 years who have gotten this standing. It's LeBron, it's AD, and Kobe. Think about that for a second. Like, that's the guys that have gotten this treatment from that organization. That's very telling about where they see AD right now, and that I find that really interesting. And it would make me scared to. It's a really interesting to see what he's going to look like at 35.
Yeah, and to tie bow on this, I mean, he's that whole part of it is very interesting. The fact that he's at that stature is maybe not how he's viewed around the league, which is part of why I bring it up, but it makes sense. I think it was where this was headed, and I think his game will age fine, just maybe not. Is he going to be an MVP candidate? No, you know, and the injuries are a big concern. But again, just from the LeBron angle, it is another step in the direction of we are not going to organize everything around keeping you as happy and, like, we're not building a LeBron dream world with the Lakers. Our future is just as important as maximizing LeBron. And they've done a lot of things, not trading for Kyrie. You know, even the way that they approach their deadline deals. A lot of these things are with the future, at least in part, in mind. All right, let's go on to, it's been a while since we recorded, so we have double slop of the week this week, Chris, which can transition us, I think, to Team USA a little bit here for a moment. I had it at the end, but we might as well do it together. The slop, which for anybody who's new is, especially in July and August, but really at all times, this league never stops churning out content, and there are varying levels of quality of that content, and slop refers to the dregs of it. And what we got this week was, this weekend really, last week into the weekend, Chris, is a ton of hype captured primarily through word of mouth, Twitter, and little social media clips that Cade Cunningham is dominating Team USA camp. He's on the select team. He apparently said no to a spot on the main team because he wanted to make sure that the calf is where it needed to be. Is Cade Cunningham the next coming of, I mean, what? Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, is he here to save Team USA? I just loved the whisper about somebody who, like, we already knew was great. I think that's what made me laugh about this.
The whole thing with like the select team like beating Team USA, it's not like
Twice.
Team USA has, well, not in like in a ton of scrimmages apparently.
Yeah,
Like just the whole thing. Look, it's not as if that this Team USA is good. It has a lot of good players. It's not like they sent the Redeem team or the Dream team out. They're not, you know what I mean? Like they're not sending like such an insane caliber of star talent to this tournament. Like Walker Kessler is good. Okay, like he's not an all-star. He had a really great rookie season. Didn't win Rookie of the Year. Good player though.
he was
right?
a DNP in their game against Puerto Rico.
So I'm saying, like it's like they didn't send like the Voltron of NBA stars to the world. Like that's not what's going on here. So it's like, yeah, this team is young enough and hungry enough and good enough at the select level that like I'm not like this doesn't totally shock me. It's also
Team
just
USA main team is a select team, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the way to put it is like
That's-
the guys
yeah.
they're all first-time national team players, the guys who are on the actual World Cup roster, and they're all very young outside of Bobby Portis. And so it's like Cade Cunningham very well, if he had just said yes, would have been on the main team, could have been potentially like their starting point guard, and yet it's a surprise when we see him dominate. The other guy that I wanted to hit on, and this does qualify as slop, even though it's good content and good reporting. This slop of the week is not disrespect to the creator of the slop. That's not how we mean it. It is just a description of what the content is. But Jovan Buha at The Athletic did sort of an informal poll where he basically just asked all the players on both the World Cup roster and the select team, who impressed you? Who like stood out the most? Who's the guy who kind of like won the camp, so to speak? And apparently Jaren Jackson was the winner of this informal survey, Chris. It doesn't surprise me because I thought his playoffs did not get enough attention, especially offensively. But the other part of this is he's also the starting five for this team, which isn't a huge surprise, but there are obvious matchups that this team's going to face in the World Cup where Jaren Jackson as your starting center is going to pose some challenges game plan-wise, even though Nikola Jokic will not be in this tournament. So what do you make of the JJJ hype, and do you feel like he is somebody who can handle playing most of every game as a center with the physicality of FIBA basketball?
We'll see about the physicality part of it, but I think you could argue on a per minute basis, even with some of the foul struggle, that this is one of the best the best defender in the league, if not like he won Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. This guy's like an insane defender who's multifaceted, multi-skilled. Like this doesn't surprise me. And Brendan, if we were going to look ahead to next season, and if you told me I had to like bet on a more established younger star taking another step forward, he'd be like in my top 3 on that list, I think. Mm-hmm. Like there's offensive room. Like I don't know exactly like what he's looked like offensively in this camp. Like it's hard to know without seeing some of this stuff, and I really am curious to watch him in that context in FIBA, just more offensively than anything else, because we know what he is defensively. But like there's another level for this guy to go offensively, and it wouldn't shock me if we saw it in this competition. Like there's a ton of meat on that bone for him to add to his offensive game. That could be absolutely coming here.
For sure. I think they have options if they need to adjust what their big man rotation is going to be. But big picture, if there's any coach that I trust to put help rules in place, switch when possible, and just kind of insulate a small ball center, it's Steve Kerr. So watching the team against Puerto Rico last night, I was definitely kind of realizing how relieving that was going to be, to have somebody who does that as their normal philosophy. And I'm sure that was part of why they built the roster this way. But in that Puerto Rico game, their center rotation was Jaren, Portis, who played like 10, 15 minutes, and then Paolo played a little bit of backup 5 over Walker Kessler. That surprised me. I'm excited for it from Paolo's developmental perspective, but I did not expect it.
You said Steve. I mean, it's Steve Kerr. Like that doesn't totally surprise me if I'm being honest.
Steve Kerr, who loves Kevon Looney, though, like.
But like he also like hated James Wiseman. It's like what's all James Wiseman? How much Kevon Looney like film do you think he was showing Paolo? And Paolo's like, I'm never gonna do this with the Orlando Magic. Like, why are you showing me?
I'm
really
surprised
good
Kevon
screens?
Looney didn't just play on this team. I wonder how much Grant Hill had to like talk Steve Kerr down from doing that. Honestly, like forget
Right,
Paolo, just give me Kevon.
Fine, we can put him on the select team. And they're like, it's like what? Like, what do you mean?
It's like how JaVale McGee ended up on the Olympic team. No one really understands it. Look, telling me Kevon Looney couldn't have gotten minutes on this roster?
He would have played 30 minutes last night in a scrimmage. Yeah. I'm sure. Just to hit on Triple J for a second. Mm-hmm. If I had right now, I think it's Triple J or Anthony Edwards that comes out of this looking like the best player for Team USA at the end of this tournament. That's where I'm at. I feel those two guys I think are going to be the two that really pop.
But I think you're right from the standpoint that in terms of sort of opportunity available versus what their maybe NBA role has been, Jaren's probably the guy who has the most to gain.
What is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to need to do immediately following this tournament while John Moran is suspended?
I mean, you don't think D Rose is going to be the guy? I thought that's what they brought Derek in for.
Hey, yeah, Marcus and Derek got this.
David you're Roddy, absolutely right. Guy. But yeah. I think, so I think the opportunity there for Triple J is especially exciting because it's going to be new stuff. Whereas Ant, it's like he's the go-to scoring option for his NBA team, and that's kind of what he's going to have to do.
Yeah, but
here,
Ant's also probably going to have at least one dunk that is like an international incident that we're going to be talking about forever. If I could bet on that, I'd be being like, is Anthony Edwards going to posterize someone in a really insane way during this tournament? The answer is absolutely yes. That's going to happen.
So if we look at this box score, you're right, by the way. Vince Carter should be worried about his place in history. 21 minutes for Tyrese Halliburton, 22 minutes for Jalen Brunson. Halliburton had 7 points and 12 assists. Brunson had 11 points and 3 assists. This was not a very competitive basketball game. 43-point win. But the first half was pretty competitive. And you could feel that the kind of defense to offense, using the athleticism to their advantage, just the way this roster is, the youth, everything. To me, it felt like it clicked into place when Halliburton was out there. And I think there might be people, and I don't know how you feel, who just think Halliburton's straight up better than Jalen Brunson already. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he isn't, but
it's close.
I could see that being one change that happens over the course of the World Cup, is Halliburton getting into at least the closing lineup, if not the starting lineup. It's just a matter of the half-court offense, and I think that's going to be the real thing, is who's more trustworthy when it really gets down to we're tight against Spain with 2 minutes to go. Halliburton can be guarded in a way that takes him out of games a little bit if the tempo does slow down.
Which one of those players feels more Curry to you? Like, not. So I understand maybe that sounded like Curry. No. I meant Curry.
Currish.
Yeah, that's a better way to do it.
Steve-ish.
Yeah.
Halliburton.
Right. I just think you might fall in love with Tyrese Halliburton over the course of this tournament and be like, sorry, Jalen, you're playing Tyrese.
Let me ask you this to close this out, because we will do like a World Cup preview, I think, or we should. We haven't talked about that yet, but
yeah.
Deep dive at least on the NBA guys.
Well, and I do want to say this was kind of in the news a couple of days ago. And he won't. I mean, best wishes to Ricky Rubio, who's going to be taking a step away for his mental health, and that would have him and an international Ricky Rubio was one of the three most things I was excited for at FIBA, just to see if he could recreate that magic maybe one last time as he gets a little bit older. But best wishes to him. But continue.
Hope he can play in the Olympics next year. But
yeah,
Spain is ranked number 1 in the world. That felt off regardless of Rubio's situation. It especially feels strange now.
Wow,
they're playing Spain this.
Juancho Hernan Gomez hater over here. This guy.
They're playing Spain this weekend. The USR, so we'll see. But
I thought it sounded like you said USSR for a second because I'm exhausted, and I was like, Brendan, what's going on here?
No, but that trip, somehow the U.S. convinced Slovenia to play in Spain. And not having to go to Slovenia and getting to spend a weekend fully in Spain is a real win. Like, Grant Hill is already doing his job for those guys.
Yeah, but not for like their ability to like go through it and like go into a crazy environment. Like, honestly,
But they don't have to. All these games are neutral court. Nobody plays at home.
I don't know. I think it would have been cool to be like, hey, you guys are going to play in an insane crowd in Eastern Europe. I would watch. Come on.
Luka would probably have won that game single-handedly, and it would have been an embarrassment on social
Yeah,
media.
you're
for 3
okay.
days.
Yeah, and you know what? Brendan, call me
want it?
unpatriotic. I come on. Tell me Luka against Team USA in Slovenia is not like one of the most insane things you could watch. You know how nuts that crowd would be.
I have already watched Luka Doncic do ugly things to Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson in a hostile environment, so maybe I'm just really scarred from that. But my last question on this, because again we will do that preview and we'll dive on all this again, but this is an impossible question to answer without knowing the interest level of a lot of different older guys. But I was watching this team wondering, who do we think is actually going to play themselves into an Olympic spot next year? Because I could see a lot of this roster not being on the radar.
100%.
2024 Olympics.
This is a placeholder roster. I'm gonna say there's 3 names that come to mind for me. It's Halliburton, it's Ant, and it's Triple J. Those are the 3.
Halliburton, Ant, Triple J. Yeah, interesting. I think Ant and Triple J, who we already kind of put side by side, are obvious. The only additional one that I'll throw in that feels like he has an inside track here is Paolo, because it would be really doing him dirty to woo him from Italy and steal him from the Italian national team, which was like an international incident almost, and then be like, thanks for the 1 World Cup. See ya, put some development hours in, buddy. We'll see you in 2028 in LA if you want it, but we're not taking you next year. So I feel like Paolo might already have his spot like reserved for the Olympics.
The other thing I would say is I feel like the select team is also just like kind of like there's some names I really like there. I know Chet's there, but it's like I feel like we're just like there's like some notable name is missing. I mean, there's 2 guys in my backyard that it's kind of interesting. The one of them has already played for Team USA at a tournament before and won, or at least was up to it, and then the other one is the best guy from his draft class when the other 2 guys are there in Garland and Mobley.
Didn't Donovan play in the 8th place finish World Cup?
Yeah, I think he did. So maybe
he's
counts
barred
against
from
him.
participation further.
Yeah, between probably that and the last 2 playoffs, it's just like, oof.
Nas Reed might be the long-term starting center for this team. We'll see.
Dude, look, our international Brennan, our guy Nas Reed, like I think he's officially on like the Just Basketball All-Star team. Mm-hmm. Like if Ant's like the first draft pick, Nas is our second round draft pick. Is that fair?
Yeah. Shea.
It's like we have Shea. Well, okay, but like saying like Shea and Ant is like kind of just being like,
yeah,
I'd like a Coke
deep
and
cuts by any means.
It's like I'd like a Coke and like a really nice piece of pizza, like a piece of margarita pizza. It's like you're picking the classics and like like the Nas Reed is like NBA hipster Twitter like a favorite, but it's like okay, like I feel we're a little ahead of the game before he drops like 40 against Spain to win the gold medal next year.
No, we have a whole month of content like next May or June about if Joel Embiid picks the U.S. or not. We'll have to see how that goes.
Nas Reed versus Rudy Gobert for the gold medal, and Nas Reed just dusts Gobert.
Nas Reed versus Victor Wembanyama for the gold is more like what it might end up being by next year. All right, we'll have more World Cup coverage. It starts in 2.5 weeks from today. The U.S. will be playing Greece. TBD if Giannis will play in this tournament. Jokic has already said no because he is a coward. We'll see what else happens. Let's go back. We're going back to the slop well here, Chris, and we're going to go through an interview given by one Caitlin Clark, one of the best basketball players alive, once again casting a little bit of doubt about her draft status. So this is with the Gazette, the local Iowa newspaper. They got a quick one-on-one with her. I'm not sure for what, maybe just kind of the opening of camp.
Well, before she went out to the Amalfi Coast, she's currently in Italy, just having a great summer by all accounts.
Well, shout out to NIL. So she said, she was asked, would you consider playing as a walk-on at some point to open another scholarship? seems like a far-fetched question, but it is something that, if you use these additional years of eligibility, which she got by way of the pandemic, starts to become a concern. I think there is something to be said for that factoring in. She said she's never really thought about it. She thinks the coach is planning far ahead. She wants her back, all this stuff. But the most key point there is she said, I'm treating this as my last year because I don't want any regrets based on what I decide or don't decide to do. All right. Follow-up question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to come back for a 5th season, which would be 2024-25? The golden question, one of the biggest questions in basketball. Business is riding on this. Some cities' fan base is riding on this. Our entertainment is riding on this. ESPN probably cares a lot, et cetera, et cetera. She says, a lot of it is going to depend on, honestly, I'll give you a 6. She started that sentence and then gave an answer. Just a little above the middle. It could definitely go either way. A lot depends on the WNBA draft lottery. A lot depends on how things go for our team this year. I'd obviously like to have somewhat of an idea before I go into this year because it's a big decision. It's a big life decision, one of the toughest decisions that I'll make. I don't know about their recruiting class, but they lost Monica Zanano, Chris, and I wonder if their team is actually going to be good enough. That was a 5-year senior at center who really helped that team. I don't know if they're better or worse in position to win this year, but I think UConn will be better, and I think South Carolina and LSU aren't going anywhere. So if she wants to win a championship, she might end up disappointed here. But the more interesting part of this to me is the shade at one particular fan base with this quote. Because if you look at the WNBA standings right now, the bottom 4 teams, which is who gets put into the lottery in that league, 3 of them are incredibly desirable places to play for a WNBA player and any human being to live. One of them is definitely not. Are you following me? Are you looking at these standings right now?
Yeah.
It's the Indiana Fever. She could have just said, if she wasn't so worried about the obvious PR issues that would have resulted from being so honest, I'm not really trying to play for the Fever. That's really what she said here.
Yeah, and it's funny because, to be honest with you, Brendan, that's one of the markets that I think, kind of makes sense for her. I think she's going to be big anywhere, but if you want to kind of maximize her...
Are we doing a race thing here? Have we delved into race?
I'm just saying, her in Indiana makes sense to me. Her in Minnesota makes sense to me.
You're getting in the winning time vibe. You're getting the Larry Bird juices flowing for yourself. I get it. You're just prepping for next week.
Sure.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the other 3, just to state them, are not Vegas, LA, Phoenix, and Seattle.
She's going to be massive wherever she goes.
Yeah. I want her to end up on the Mercury, more than I really can put into words. I might be more excited for that than the day the Durant trade happened, just because you're getting her for probably her whole entire career. I think that if any of the other 3 teams win the lottery, I think Caitlin Clark will go out.
Aaliyah Boston's really got to do some behind the back curtain here.
Well, I mean, the good thing is the consolation prizes in next year's draft are pretty damn good too. So the Fever are probably on their way with Boston, but it's nice in the W that you have the luxury of knowing that ahead of time, I will say.
This is also the thing that I think
because the draft is the week after the tournament for them.
Well, number one, I think there's 2 things we have to remember here. On the men, compared to the men, just because NIL for her, I'm sure, is insanely lucrative, and she's going to make endorsements when she goes to the pros wherever. But compared to Apollo, there's more incentive for her just to earn a bunch of money and stay somewhere she's really comfortable and kind of dictate herself. There's just better structure for her to do that. Secondly, she is just going to be this unique thing where she could really just she's going to have more control than almost anyone we've seen in that regard, because we would assume she's going to go, even when we've said that's a loaded class, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be a situation where she's going to be one even ahead of Paige, Van Lith, Cameron Brink, Angel. She's probably going to go 1, barring something insane. And also, I wonder for her, and this doesn't really get into the interview, but we can look at this year and say this might not be the best Iowa team, right? I don't know how likely it is, Brendan, that when you're here in wonderful Cleveland, Ohio, that the Iowa Hawkeyes are playing in those games, right? I don't know. Does that instead of
even if you're the best team, it's a crapshoot.
Right. But like if they'd just be able to run it back, you'd have been like, okay, like you'd think there's a good chance they have a very nice shot to do that, right?
Yeah.
Lesser now. I don't know. We'll see what the rankings look like and whatnot. I am curious to see if that weighs on her. She's like, I really want to go give myself one chance to really do the one thing I haven't done in college, which is win the national title.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, she has to go pro at some point, right? And so in some ways, there is the draw. It's part of why I think it's so fascinating that not only the Sparks I wouldn't necessarily group in there, but I think that the Mercury and Storm are not only like two of the like 6 biggest cities in the country and big endorsement opportunities and just good places to live and on and on and on, but they're also places where the basketball organization is very well run. The Storm have a really dedicated ownership group that's independent of anything related to the NBA, obviously, because there's no Seattle team. And then the Mercury they were already well run, and now they have a owner who wants to throw money around for the foreseeable future, and Matt Ishbia, because they are owned by the Suns. So it's like such a dichotomy. It's not just the Fever, LOL. It's like she could choose to lock herself into a particularly good opportunity in organizations with real legacies and cities that provide her a lot of stuff, or she could try to go back one more year. But what if the 4 teams in the lottery in 2025 are all undesirable or all small markets, So it's fascinating that the ripple effects of all this COVID eligibility stuff might result in like extreme maneuvering for one of the greatest talents that sport has ever seen. This sport has ever seen, but more time will tell. More obviously to come. We'll see what happens. The lottery in the WNBA happens way after the season ends, so we won't even know who wins that lottery until March or April. Let's close out with one more WNBA thing, Chris. Diana Taurasi last Thursday broke through 10,000 points for her career. And that in of itself is one of those round number things that we just like as, small-brained human beings. She didn't break anybody's record. She just reached a height that nobody else in league history has ever reached because she became the all-time leading scorer, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. So this is like the late 80s for Kareem. This is just piling up the numbers that others will only dream of reaching. And I just wanted to put that achievement into perspective a little bit. I'm punching myself in the face for not seeing ahead of time that date might be the one when she was going to break it because I was not in the building for this. I'm allowing myself the grace of I was there when she broke the scoring record in the first place. Cooler achievement. I did get to be in the building for that, but not for this. She is just so far and away above everybody else. She is 3,000 points above the next active leading scorer, somebody who could actually catch her, but that's Tina Charles, who's effectively retired. And then you even look at 3-pointers made, and she's more than double the next closest active player, which is Christy Tolliver, who is already a coach for the Mavericks and on her way to retirement. Like, this is Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like, unreachable, undreamable, impossible levels of production. And the only thing I think anyone will be able to do to reach her is take advantage of the increasing number of games that are being played in the league. Like, that's the only, I think anyone else, like, to play deep into their 30s and everything, it's just, it really is unparalleled. We might just see other players reach it because, 40 already is where we are. It's going to go up from there.
Our friend of the program, Serena Merchant, had this in her power rankings this week. I'm going to read this paragraph because I thought it was a really well-written paragraph and very insightful. First and foremost, Taurasi is in one of the finest scoring stretches of her career. She didn't limp to the finish line, but rather charged to the 10K threshold with 42 points, a regulation career high for the 41-year-old. Over the last 4 games since she returned from injury, Taurasi has scored 119 points, the most she's tallied in a 4-game stretch since 2006, when she set the WNBA single-season scoring record. This is unbelievable.
Doesn't make sense.
Look, Taurasi, in a lot of ways, I think is responsible. How do I say this? Taurasi, I think, is part of the story of how women's basketball became really popular in this country. I think so. I think Taurasi is one of the great ambassadors of women's basketball.
Of basketball?
Of basketball. Taurasi is one of the best ambassadors we have for basketball. I think what will ultimately be a bummer to some degree is that like there's this wave of its popularity rising as she has sort of been on the back nine, so to speak, of her career. And stuff like this like should get a bigger deal. I think ESPN did a really cool thing where did you see that story that was like a graphic design of like how she shoots and her but like just everything in that was very cool and very well done and very insightful. It's the kind of thing that sports media companies should do to honor the best we've ever seen, and I'm glad they did it for Taurasi because she deserves it.
Another cool one on the Mercury Team website that I'll shout out.
Shout out to them. There is just something about her that I think we like. She's gonna do whenever she does retire, and like Lord knows when that exactly will be. You might have a better grasp on it than me. I just feel like we're gonna need to give her all the flowers possible because she's doing things that are absolutely just insane.
Agreed completely. She is 41. She should not be doing this. There's really no precedent for it. I think I might have told the story or walked through this thought process previously in the podcast, but I thought it was over in 2019. She broke multiple vertebrae in her back and looked absolutely atrocious when she tried to come back. Had surgery. Obviously, spinal surgery is not exactly like a walk in the park. And, she was 37 at that point. It was around late June, I think. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like, amazing career. I believe that 3 championships at that point, and many, many time All-Star, MVPs. She is the greatest athlete in Phoenix history, all that stuff. She's had 4 years since then. And one of those years she went to the WNBA finals. Mm-hmm. This year she gets to 10,000 points, and this historic level of play that she's on right now. The 3 she made over Ryan Howard on the right wing to get the record was like, to come full circle for the show, like Sabrina Ionescu shit. I know it's really Diana Taurasi shit that Sabrina was doing, to be more accurate, but like just things that we shouldn't be seeing. And so that's why I think I think the Kareem comparison, to piggyback off of what you were talking about in terms of the ambassadorship and the historical and the doing it when there wasn't a lot of shine and attention on the league that they played in and all that type of stuff. I think that's how she should be remembered and will be remembered, is this historical figure, this larger than life character, this person who just sets these unachievable records and then doesn't necessarily get to see the highest highs of attention and glory that maybe they deserve. But I mean, it's impossible to deny anything she's doing, and this is just another chapter for it.
She, I think there's like a world coming for her where it's kind of like her Kobe era, right? Like I think we're kind of feels like we're in that a little bit.
She might disappear when she retires is the only thing. She has like 2 or 3 kids now, and she lives in Southern California, but not like in the middle of everything in LA. I don't think wherever their house is. I think it's kind of in the suburbs of Orange County and whatnot. I feel like she might be one that's just like, bye everybody. I'll do an ESPN appearance once a year with Sue Bird, and then I'll never be seen again until next year.
Yeah, she could just continue to be such an amazing ambassador for the game if she wanted to, but maybe that's Sue Bird's role, right? Because Sue Bird, Megan Rapinoe is about to retire, and I'm sure they're going to be very public figures. I think they're kind of invested in being public figures in a way. I think to your point, that is right. That's Rossi and her wife Penny Taylor, who used to play in the NBA as well. Like they're not, right?
Yeah,
you have a Penny Taylor jersey.
It's not a real jersey. It's what they gave out on her Ring of Honor enshrinement thing.
Former Cleveland Rocker, I believe, Penny Taylor.
Correct. OG Cleveland Rocker.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bring him back. Caitlin Clark, would you like to live in Cleveland? I can give you some great restaurant recommendations.
Where do you think Cleveland ranks on the expansion power rankings for the WNBA? Is it in the top 10?
No, I think Columbus. I know you're
Columbus,
fucking
yes.
with me. I know you're fucking with me right now, but Columbus would be the Ohio city that's ahead of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's correct, but I've talked to people about it, and the Columbus is the answer I always get.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I'm not trying to undersell her or say that she's not interested in being that type of ambassador. I also just think there's an element of she is like the most reserved shit talker that you could imagine. She is very provocative and loud and in your face, but off the court and kind of interpersonally, like she's a jokester, she's funny, she's goofy, but she's not trying to be the center of attention at all times by any means.
Well, she hasn't publicly memed herself like Kobe did. Like Kobe, like there's the Kanye Kobe thing where like it's like a joke of the Mamba mentality. Taurasi's like never done that. You know, like there's never like that level of the Taurasi thing. I would really like her to do like a 2-hour interview on like a podcast at some point though, just with like I don't know who the right just basketball show, but or like another like or someone like a basketball like maybe it's like a JJ Redick interview or something where like she really opened it up. I would be fascinated.
She did an IG live with Sue Bird at the beginning of COVID that got like a bunch of attention. That's where the wine glass meme came from. Of her raising the glass. But they were very open and honest because they were not just half a drink in, if you understand what I'm saying.
Look, early days of COVID IG lives for like anyone with a celebrity platform who like is used to attention was like a really wild time. Just like people just like.
How starved for content we all were. Yeah. But yeah, no, she did the Simmons podcast once upon a time. There is another chapter. I think she's young enough. She's passionate enough. I wouldn't surprise me if she was a coach or an executive in the W. I don't think she'll just disappear forever, but I also don't think she's the type who's like, I'm going to do a farewell tour and get a bunch of gifts and attention and 16 profiles written about me and a documentary and this and that. I think it'll just be sort of like, you got me for 20 years. Are you not entertained type of thing? Diana Taurasi's been playing basketball at a competitive level since I was 4. When she started at UConn, I was 4 years old. That doesn't even make sense. She's given us plenty of time, you know?
Have you ever, this is maybe a good place to end it, but have you read the New York Times profile of her when she was playing in Russia? You ever read this?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you because it's an amazing. I'm gonna find it because I haven't read it in a while, but it's one of the most amazing sports profiles I've read, and I maybe we'll put it in the show notes or something. But it is truly like an amazing profile of her and like her life and a candidness and a rawness to her that I would like a revisit of that now to some degree. You know, like send Ramona Shelburne to Phoenix for a week and follow her around. Send Sabrina Merchant and give her the access for a DT profile for The Athletic. Like that's the kind of thing that I would love. Drew, I would also like if I could pick like a top 5 of athletes to like do a book, like a memoir. I think she would be really high. She would be very high up on that list for me. Yeah. If she was willing to be candid. Brendan, actually, we do have one more thing. We have a game we got to play.
We do.
Okay. So this won't really make the rundown, but I want to end on a very like goofy note here. People may have seen this clip. I saw it from our friends at Dime of Stephen Curry singing "Misery Business" with Haley Williams of the lead singer of Paramore at a Paramore show. This has been a thing I've seen via Instagram that Paramore has had people come out to sing "Misery Business" with them, like Lil Uzi Vert. Yeah, like Lil Uzi Vert has done it. Like it's a cool little bit. Steph Curry is such a random pull for that. If I'm being honest, it's like a little weird.
Sure, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's just I need a breakdown of how that happened. If I'm being honest, like if there's more pressing matters, but like on media day, I need someone to be like, "Hey, Steph, it's Bob from the San Francisco Chronicle. Just how did you end up singing Misery Business? Like, were like what? Like it was just very weird." So this led me to a question. I love when NBA players like interact with the real world or WNBA players interact with the real world in like a really in a weird way because I think it's just funny. It's just like. So do you have like a pairing of a professional basketball player and an artist who you would like to see them, like if that was gonna happen and we had to watch it, that you just like want to see what it would look like? Because one immediately came to mind. One immediately came to mind for me.
Yeah. So. I thought immediately of which players or teams have the closest associations with musicians because I was just trying to rack my brain of what would make the most sense.
Okay.
And so I very quickly got to Drake and the Raptors. And from there,
Grady Dick?
yes.
Yeah.
Grady Dick singing either Hotline Bling or In My Feelings. Two of the more singable Drake songs. So it's one of those two songs, and it is Man of the Hour, Man of Toronto, Man of everybody's I don't even know. He doesn't feel real. He lives in a parallel reality. But Grady Dick singing one of those two Drake songs.
That's a good one. Didn't think of that until you said it. I'm kind of mad that wasn't where my brain went. I'm a little surprised with how infiltrated with Grady Dick like memes and like him like being out in public, like just looking like a total like alien.
Sidebar: the Raptors need him because not from a basketball standpoint, but from the standpoint of the rest of their players are boring as hell. So give the Raptors some intrigue. Fred's gone. He was cool. Like, nobody knows anything about Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. Nobody knows about those people, so they needed some personality.
Yeah. Weirdest white, like, maybe has the crown of weirdest white boy in the league already.
Yes,
right?
Far and away, yeah.
Okay. Brendan, my answer is Jimmy Butler. Noted country music fan Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. And the song Heavy Eyes with Zach Bryan. Give me a big show. Give me Jimmy Butler singing with Zach Bryan about getting drunk and being up really late and making mistakes and just being stupid. And Jimmy Butler in like a good country that still tilts into like the party atmosphere of it. Like, I'm not saying I'm not gonna pair Jimmy with Morgan Wallen. I'm a man of taste. Okay, Zach Bryan in a big show, maybe like just somewhere random, and like let's get Jimmy Butler doing his country twang thing.
I like it. The problem with Jimmy Butler and country music in general, but maybe that song as a specific example is, no, I'm not going to do anything problematic here. I just don't think
No, I'm just saying, Brendan, the crux of my New York trip was a Liberty game and a Tyler Childers show, so like we're just, okay, we're hitting.
No, the issue is I don't think Jimmy Butler's ever made a mistake at any point of the day.
No,
the idea of Jimmy Butler having regrets, it just doesn't feel compatible. So the fact that he even likes country music, which is so central to like heartbreak and personal, shame and all these, kind of very interior feelings, I just don't think of Jimmy Butler as having any issues ever. I mean, he's overcome a lot in his life. The dude's cool as hell. Like, he's a great basketball player. I mean, it's all vibes and joy for Jimmy. And
that song's really...
He does. Yeah. So you're right to say he would do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm just taking issue with the whole idea, and I don't understand it.
Look, I think got into it via like a back angle of like annoying his teammates by playing country music.
Well, he's from Texas.
Well, but there's an interview you can clip a find of him where he didn't like some of the music guys were playing in the locker room and he wanted them to use headphones. Yeah. So because he's Jimmy Butler, he started playing country music, then he just got into it. I'm just saying, man. Put him with Zach Bryan, one of our greats, and let's have a good time.
I mean, I will say he's buddies with Neymar, so the Morgan Wallen thing might be more real than letting it on.
That's tough for me personally. The whole Neymar thing is just really tough too.
I do just feel like Neymar and Morgan Wallen probably are friends. I don't even have any grounding with that. It's a guess, but I feel like I can put it out there.
Yeah. I also like there's like some rap ones. Obviously, you could probably do pretty easily.
I thought of Durant with rap, but a lot of NBA guys are so into rap that it would be like not fun. It would just be them legitimately rapping along, and that's not really like that cool. All things considered.
I personally would like to see James Harden on stage with Lil Baby. Like, I feel like the fact that hasn't happened yet feels like kind of like weird.
Fair.
Like maybe
James
it has
Harden
and I missed it.
And Travis Scott, another one.
Yeah. Just James Harden with something in Houston, Texas, just feels like a very obvious thing that hasn't happened. Grady Dick's a great answer. Grady Dick and Drake is like a great answer though. Grady Dick and like The Weeknd.
You gave me time to think about it, and I did too much research. All right, that will wrap us up for the day. We'll be back next week talking winning time, talking basketball Hall of Fame. Hopefully, get a guest on. Shout out to Dylan Heiser as always for his production help. Shout out to you all for hitting subscribe wherever you're finding the show, including YouTube, where you can give us a thumbs up. You can give us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify, all that good stuff to support the show. Buy some homage gear, and we'll catch you guys next week.